the inmates slept. The Huron nation was divided into 4 clans: the Bear, the Rock, the Cord, the Deer, with several small dependent groups. There was government of a sort, republican in form. They had their deliberative assemblies, both village and tribal. The village councils met almost daily, but the tribal assembly, a sort of States General, was summoned only when some weighty measure demanded consideration. Decisions arrived at in the assemblies were proclaimed by the chiefs. Of religion, as it is understood by Christians, the Hurons had none, nothing but superstitions, very like those of other barbarous people. To everything in nature they have a god: trees, lakes, streams, the celestial bodies, the blue expanse, they deified with okies or spirits. Among the chief objects of Huron worship were the moon and the sun. The oki of the moon had the care of souls and the power to cut off life. The oki of the sun presided over the living and sustained all created things. The great vault of heaven with its myriad stars inspired them with awe. It was the abode of the Spirit of Spirits, the Master of Life. Huronia was the name they gave this supreme oki. This would show that they had a vague conception of God. To Huronia they offered sacrifices. To Huronia they appealed in time of danger, and when misfortune befell them it was due to the anger of Huronia. But all this had no influence on their conduct. Even in their worship they were often astoundingly vicious. To such dens of barbarism had come men fresh from the civilization of the Old World, men of learning, culture, and gentle birth, in whose veins flowed the proudest blood of France. To these savages, indolent, superstitious, and vicious, had come Brebeuf, Noue, and Daillon, with a message of peace, goodwill, and virtue. Until the middle of October the 3 fathers lived together at Toanche, save that Daillon went on a brief visit to Ossossane, on the shore of Nottawasaga Bay. The Recollet, however, had instructions from his superior Le Caron to go to the country of the Neutrals, of which Champlain's interpreter, Etienne Brulé, had reported glowingly, but which was as yet untrodden by the feet of missionaries. And so on the 18th of October 1626 Daillon set out on the trail southward, with 2 French traders as interpreters and an Indian guide. Arriving among the Neutrals, after a journey of 5 or 6 days, he was at first kindly received in each of the 6 towns which he visited. But this happy situation was not to last. The Neutral country, now the richest and most populous part of Ontario, boasted such cities as Hamilton and Brantford and London, was rich in fur-bearing animals and tobacco, and the Hurons were the middlemen in trade between the Neutrals and the French. The Hurons, fearing now that they were to lose their business, for it was rumoured that Daillon was seeking to have the Neutrals trade directly with the French, sent messengers to the Neutrals denouncing the Grey Robe as a sorcerer who had come to destroy them with disease and death. In this the Neutral medicine men agreed, for they were jealous of the priest. The plot succeeded. The Indians turned from Daillon, closed their doors against him, stole his writing desk, blanket, breviary, and trinkets, and even threatened him with death. But Brebeuf learned of his plight, probably from one of the Hurons who had raised the Neutrals against him, and sent a Frenchman and an Indian runner to escort him back to Toanche. There was a break in the mission in 1627. Noue lacked the physical strength and the mental alertness essential to a missionary in these wilds. Finding himself totally unable to learn even the rudiments of the Huron language, he returned to Quebec, since he did not wish to be a burden to Brebeuf. For a year longer Brebeuf and the Recollet Daillon remained together at Toanche, but in the autumn of 1628 Daillon left Huronia. He was the last of the Recollets to minister to the Hurons. Save for his French hired men, or engages, Brebeuf was now alone among the savage people. In this awful solitude he laboured with indomitable will, ministering to his flock, studying the Huron language, compiling a Huron dictionary and grammar, and translating the Catechism. The Indians soon saw in him a friend, and when he passed through the village ringing his bell, old and young followed him to his cabin to hear him tell of God, of heaven the reward of the good, and of hell the eternal abode of the unrighteous. But he made few converts. The Indian idea of the future had nothing in common with the Christian idea. The Hurons, it is true, believed in a future state, but it was to be only a reflex of the present life, with the difference that it would give them complete freedom from work and suffering, abundant game, and an unfailing supply of tobacco. Brebeuf's one desire was to live and die among this people. But the colony at Quebec was in a deplorable condition, as he knew, and he was not surprised when, early in the summer of 1629, he received a message requesting his presence there. Gathering his flock about him, he told them that he must leave them. They had, as a sign of affection, given him the Huron name Echon. Now Christian and pagan alike cried out, "You must not leave us, Echon." He told them that he had to obey the order of his superior, but that he would with God's grace return and bring with him whatever was necessary to lead them to know God and serve him. Then he bade them farewell, and, joining a flotilla of 12 canoes, about to depart for Quebec, he and his engages set out. They arrived at Notre Dame des Anges on the 17th of July, to find the Jesuits there in consternation at the rumoured report of the approach of a strong English fleet. End of chapter 3.